I never thought owning a legal business, something I worked so hard for, could bring me this much trouble. I never imagined that following the law, getting all the licenses, and keeping everything safe would still make me the target of people who just wanted control. Yet here I am, living in a neighborhood with an HOA that decided to fine me, threaten me, and make my life difficult just because they don't like what I do. And let me tell you, this story is not just about me. It's about freedom. It's about rights. And it's about how far people will go when they think they have power over you. When I first moved into this neighborhood, I had no idea how much drama would come with the HOA. To me, it was just a nice community, quiet streets, kids riding their bikes, and families enjoying weekends together. The houses were neat, lawns trimmed, and everything looked peaceful. But behind that perfect image, there was a group of people who thought they had the right to control every little thing you do. At first, I didn't pay much attention to them. I was busy with my life, busy with my business, and I honestly thought the HOA was just about making sure people didn't paint their houses purple or let their grass grow too long. I was wrong. The first time I heard from them, it wasn't even about guns. It was about my truck. They said it was parked in the driveway too often, and apparently that went against the community standards. I laughed when I read the letter because I thought it was a joke. How could parking in my own driveway be a problem? But it wasn't a joke. They wanted me to move my truck into the garage every night or pay a fine. That was my first taste of the HOA's power games. I should have known then that it was only the beginning. Now, let me tell you what really set things off. I'm a licensed firearms dealer. That means I follow federal law. I've gone through background checks. I keep strict records, and I do everything by the book. My business isn't shady. It isn't dangerous. It's legal, professional, and safe. I even built a secure storage system in my home office, one that would put most gun shops to shame. My neighbors didn't even know what I did at first, because I wasn't loud about it. I wasn't waving guns around or causing trouble. But the moment someone in the HOA found out, everything changed. It started with whispers. I could feel the way people looked at me when I drove home. Some stopped waving back when I greeted them. Others would pull their kids closer when I walked by. It was like I had suddenly become some kind of threat, even though nothing about me had changed. Then came the letter. The HOA said that running a firearms business out of my home was a violation of community rules. They claimed it was unsafe. They claimed it was against the neighborhood values. And they demanded that I shut it down or face fines. I was furious. I sat there holding that letter, my hands shaking, not out of fear, but out of anger. How dare they? Who were they to tell me what I could or couldn't do in my own home, especially when I was following the law? I had spent years building this business. I had invested money, time, and energy. And now, some group of neighbors with too much free time thought they could take it all away with one letter? No, not on my watch. I wrote back to them. I explained clearly that I was a licensed dealer, that everything I was doing was legal under federal and state law, and that their so-called rules didn't override my constitutional rights. I reminded them that they had no authority to regulate firearm sales. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought they would back down once they realized they were out of their league. But of course they didn't. Instead, they doubled down. They sent me another notice, this time with a fine attached. They claimed I owed hundreds of dollars for unauthorized business activity. I couldn't believe it. They were actually trying to fine me for following the law. I called them up, and the conversation that followed is something I'll never forget. I asked the HOA president straight up, "Do you understand that I'm licensed by the federal government to do this? Do you understand that your rules don't erase my rights?" And you know what he said? He said, "We don't care about federal law. We care about our community." That sentence lit a fire inside me. It was the purest example of arrogance I had ever heard. They didn't care about the law. They didn't care about rights. They only cared about power. And when people care only about power, they become dangerous. At this point, it wasn't just about the money. It wasn't about the fine. It was about standing up for myself and for anyone else who had ever been bullied by people in power. I started documenting everything. Every letter they sent, every fine they tried to slap on me, every conversation I had with them. I kept records because I knew where this was headed. I knew that one day this fight was going to escalate, and I wanted to be ready. And trust me, it did escalate. One day, I came home to find an HOA board member standing on my lawn, pointing at my house, and talking to another neighbor. When I got out of my truck, they gave me that look, the one that said, "You don't belong here." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about rules anymore. This was personal. They had decided that I was the enemy. But here's the thing. They underestimated me. They thought I would roll over. They thought I would be scared into giving up. But I wasn't scared. I was angry. And anger, when it's controlled, is powerful. It gives you strength. It gives you focus. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for something bigger. So I lawyered up. I found someone who understood both firearms law and property law. And when we sent our response to the HOA, it was a masterpiece. We laid out everything. How I was fully licensed, how they had no authority, how their fines were baseless, and how their harassment was illegal. We even warned them that if they didn't stop, we would take them to court. You should have seen their faces at the next HOA meeting. Oh, they were angry. They were frustrated. But deep down, they were scared. Because now, they knew I wasn't alone. Now, they knew I had the law on my side. But even then, they didn't quit. No, they tried to get creative. They started spreading rumors. They told neighbors that my house was unsafe, that I had weapons lying around, that kids were in danger just by walking past my home. Lies. Complete lies. And those lies hurt, because I had always been careful. I had always been responsible. And to have my reputation attacked like that, it stung. And that's when I realized something important. This fight wasn't just about me versus the HOA. This was about truth versus fear. It was about freedom versus control. And every time I stood up, every time I refused to back down, I was sending a message, not just to them, but to everyone watching. So let me tell you this. If you're ever in a situation where someone tries to take away your rights, your freedom, or your dignity, don't let them. Don't roll over. Don't let fear control you. Stand up. Fight back. Because when you do, you don't just protect yourself. You inspire others. And before we move on, let me ask you this. If someone tried to strip away your rights, would you fight back? Would you stand tall? Think about it. Because one day, you might have to make that choice. When I thought things couldn't get any worse, the HOA decided to push harder. I remember the day clearly. A certified letter arrived in my mailbox, and the bold red stamp on the envelope almost made my blood boil before I even opened it. Inside was a notice saying I now owed over $1,000 in fines for dangerous activity. They had actually written in black and white that my licensed firearms business was a danger to the community. I held that letter in my hands, and I felt a storm brewing inside me. It wasn't just unfair. It wasn't just false. It was insulting. I had played by the rules my whole life. I had worked hard, gotten all the permits, done everything by the book. I had respected the law even when it wasn't easy. And now, here were a few neighbors with nothing but titles on a board, trying to destroy everything I had built. They thought paper fines and empty threats could scare me into submission. But what they didn't know was this. I don't break under pressure. I get stronger. So I decided to fight not just with words, but with proof. I gathered every document, every license, every regulation that showed I was fully in the right. I took photos of my storage, of my security system, of the safety measures I had put in place. I wanted the truth to shine so bright that even the people who hated me would be forced to see it. And then I sent everything to my lawyer. When my lawyer reviewed the case, he almost laughed. He said, "They don't have a leg to stand on. What they're doing isn't just harassment, it's illegal." Those words lit a fire in me. Illegal. That meant it wasn't just me being bullied. It meant the HOA was breaking the law by targeting me. And that meant I could fight them in ways they weren't prepared for. The next HOA meeting was like walking into enemy territory. The room was tense. The board members sat at the front with their stiff faces, acting like they were kings on thrones. Some neighbors sat quietly, some looked curious, and a few glared at me like I was a criminal. But I wasn't afraid. I stood tall, holding my papers, holding the truth. And when they tried to shame me, I spoke. I told everyone in that room exactly who I was. I told them I was a licensed firearms dealer. I told them I followed federal and state law. I told them I had passed more background checks than anyone in that room probably ever would. And I told them that no HOA had the authority to erase constitutional rights. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I spoke with fire, with conviction, with truth. Some people clapped. Yes, in that room, where I felt surrounded, a few hands came together. They weren't loud, but they were steady. And that sound gave me hope. It showed me that not everyone believed the lies. It showed me that some people respected courage more than fear. The board tried to shut me down. They said, this isn't the time or place. They said, the community doesn't feel safe. But I fired back. I asked them, when has my business ever harmed anyone here? When have I ever broken a law? When have I ever put anyone in danger? Silence filled the room because they couldn't answer. They had nothing. After that night, things changed. The HOA didn't stop completely, but their confidence cracked. They sent more letters, but the tone was weaker. They tried to find me again, but my lawyer responded with even stronger warnings. The more they pushed, the more they realized I wasn't going to break. And slowly, the cracks started to show on their side. One of the board members actually quit. Rumor was she couldn't handle the heat anymore. Another started avoiding me completely, walking the long way around the block just to not face me. And the president, the one who had once said he didn't care about federal law, he started stumbling over his words whenever I confronted him. They were losing their grip, and they knew it. But even as the HOA was falling apart, I still felt the sting of everything they had done. The lies they spread had damaged my reputation. Some neighbors still looked at me with suspicion. Some kids weren't allowed to play near my house anymore. And that hurt more than any fine or letter ever could. Because I'm not a danger. I'm a father, a friend, a neighbor. I care about my community. And to be treated like a monster just because of my business, it cut deep. That pain taught me something, though. It taught me the value of standing tall, even when people misunderstand you. It taught me that courage isn't about being liked. It's about doing what's right even when the world turns its back. And it taught me that if you don't fight for your freedom, someone will gladly take it away. So I decided not just to fight for myself, but to speak out for others. I started sharing my story. I started telling people how the HOA had crossed a line, how they had abused their power, how they had tried to crush me but failed. And the more I spoke, the more people connected. Messages poured in from others who had faced the same kind of bullying, not just from HOAs, but from bosses, from local officials, from anyone who thought they had power over someone else. My story became their story, and together we found strength. Eventually, the HOA backed down. They stopped sending fines. They stopped harassing me. Maybe it was the lawyer. Maybe it was the pressure from the community. Or maybe they finally realized they couldn't win. Whatever it was, the silence that followed felt like victory. A hard-earned, bitter, but beautiful victory. But let me tell you this, the scars remain. The memory of being treated like a criminal for following the law stays with me. The frustration of being judged unfairly stays with me. And the lesson, it's carved deep into my soul. The lesson is this: freedom isn't free. You have to protect it. You have to fight for it. Because there will always be someone who thinks they can take it from you. There will always be someone who thinks their opinion matters more than your rights. And if you let them, they'll walk all over you. But if you stand tall, if you push back, if you hold your ground, then you don't just protect yourself. You protect everyone who comes after you. So to anyone listening right now, let my story be a warning and a call to action. Don't let fear silence you. Don't let power scare you. Don't let anyone convince you that your rights are less important than their rules. Stand tall. Speak out. Fight back. Because in the end, the HOA didn't win. They tried, they pushed, they bullied, but they failed. And I'm still here. My business is still running. My rights are still mine. And my spirit? Stronger than ever. So ask yourself this. When life puts you against people who want to crush your freedom, will you bow down or will you rise up? The choice is yours. But if you choose to rise, remember, you're not alone. There are people like me, people who've been to the fire and come out stronger. And together, we can show the world that freedom is worth fighting for. And if this story lit a fire in you, don't let it burn out. Share it. Tell others. Inspire someone else to stand tall. Because every voice matters. Every story matters. And maybe, just maybe, your courage will be the spark that helps someone else find their own.